Put it. Hello, everybody. Dr. Meri Crouley for Now Is the Time. We have a very amazing show today with Larry Ballard, the author of Liberty Crusade. He's got some interesting news. Some of you saw maybe what happened with President Trump and the South Africans yesterday. There's a number of things we're going to be talking about geopolitically, and this is an amazing season to be alive, so you don't want to miss out. But before we do the show, we're going to bring up the My Pillow commercial. You know, my friend Mike Lindell, I interviewed him, a few years ago. We need to support My Pillow. They've tried to take him down, a lot of the big box stores, but now is an important season that we need to literally support My Pillow. Let's run that commercial, please.
I hear every day about the products you all wish My Pillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard My Pillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use My Pillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bed sheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all My Pillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard My Pillows absolutely free.
Wow, I want to get a couple of My Pillows for free. Go to mypillow.com, put in my promo code Meri, M-E-R-I, right in the middle of America. And if you go over $100, you're going to get 2 free My Pillows. So anyway, it really will help him, and it actually helps my podcast as well. So Larry, good to see you again. How have you been?
Same here, Meri. Everything's great on my end.
Yeah, so that was a pretty amazing thing yesterday that happened with President Trump at the White House, with the South Africans. And we're going to be talking about some of this, but what was your impression about that, where he showed that video of the genocide of a lot of the the white farmers in South Africa? Did you see the look on their face?
Yep, everything's changing, everything's getting exposed. The things that we used to say, oh, that's conspiracy theory, is no longer conspiracy theory. So that's it. Everything that can change will be changed. And that's really what this is about. It's a geopolitical realignment of all the power structures of the world. It's going to affect every major nation. So the people out there looking at this, what I'm going to try to do is to get behind the scenes a little bit as to the story that the news media is telling us and spin it a little differently. And I'm going to try to show you how it's going to affect you in your personal life. So we can dive into this anytime you want, Meri.
Yes, and for you watching, some people might think, well, I don't really care about geopolitical. What is that? But the reason they've tried to change the history of America and the world is because if we don't learn from history, we will repeat it. And so we really need to know what's really going on. The mainstream media, for a number of years, controlled the narrative. And so many people don't even know really the truth. And as the Word of God says, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So let's bring up the slides.
Okay. So there's the title page. We can just skip that real quick and go on down. But what you're basically going to ask yourself, based on what Meri said, is why do I care? Well, do you care about having financial security? Do you care about not having perpetual wars? Do you care about having the economic system serve you and getting rid of the corruption in our country? So if you do, then watch this. Now, what this is I've done 3 or 4 in-depth presentations on China. Well, maybe you saw them, maybe you don't. But I want to basically set the stage that everything that can change is going to change. And let's start with China. There's 16 things that are affecting China and causing it to collapse. There's never in the history of the world been a nation that's been up against this much of a perfect storm and come out without an absolute collapse. So I'm going to run through the headers. What I might recommend, for time's sake, I'm not going to read all of this. Get your cameras out, take a screenshot so you can review this in detail afterwards. So bottom line is, number one, you've got civil unrest. Imagine this. We had efforts to try to get a 1,000,000-man march a couple of times, and whether we made it or not, I don't know, but they have 100 million people protesting in China over a variety of different things. And one of the things they're calling for is for Xi Jinping to step down. They got a debt crisis. Their GDP is 345%. Their debt is 345% of GDP. They got the largest real estate collapse in the history of the world, $60 trillion. Banking crisis. People can't get their money out of the banks. Population collapse. Basically, they had their one-child policy, and now they can't get people to have babies. And by the end of the century, they say that it'll be 600 million people. That's it. The population is going to be half of what it is now. Factory closures, they say by the end of this year, 90 or 95% of all the factories in China will be shut down. Unemployment, they're claiming it's 20%. It's way more than that, because most of those people are protesting because they lost all their money in the real estate market. They can't get their money out of the banks, and they don't have a job, and they don't have a future. Dwindling workforce, that's the population decline and collapse of the tech sector. Now, that was brought on China intentionally by Xi Jinping, because he saw the power that those tech giants had, and they said, they're threatening me. So basically, he cost the economy over $1 trillion in that one move that he did. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to try to get through this real quick so we can have time for a real conversation. So number 10, they've always had water insecurity and food insecurity, and it's cost 5 of their 17 dynasties to fall in the past. Energy dependency, they import 73% of their oil and they only have 80 days reserve. Failure of the Belt and Road, this one's huge. This was their 100-year plan for renewable energy, for all the technologies that they needed in order to control the world, for all the minerals, and it's literally falling apart because they're collapsing, and so are the nations that they were doing projects with. So basically, that's the biggest thing on this list. Collapse of the domestic markets. Basically, when their people are impoverished and going back to poverty, you don't have a domestic market. So they're losing both the international market and the domestic market. Collapse of export markets, basically down this, they're saying 20%, but I don't ever trust the numbers I get from China. And collapse of foreign investment, 56% or more. Put all that together, and if that isn't a perfect storm, I don't know what is. There's never been a nation survive an onslaught like this. China is falling. Meri, anything that you would add to that? Because that's a pretty big statement I just made.
Well, the research that you've done, and right now we're seeing around the world that God is getting ready to bring in a great awakening, and there's been millions of Christian Chinese that are praying. And so I believe there is a great awakening in China, and God is going to turn things around for the people in China, but they are collapsing. Everything has to be exposed. So continue.
That's got more to do with this geopolitical alignment than you could possibly realize. We get to the right slide, I'll tap back in on what you just said. If you go to the next slide, I want to put this 100 million person protest in focus. So basically, the people are protesting, particularly the young, and Xi Jinping is saying the following to them. He's completely ignoring their plight, and he says they have incredibly broad stage on which they can display their full talents, and they have incredibly bright, prosperous, and realizing their dreams. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read on my screen, and it was a little blurry. My eyes aren't that good. Anyway, bottom line is, he's completely ignoring them and saying, you've got a great prospect, great future when the economy is collapsing, when they don't have a job, and when they don't know what they're going to do, and they've lost their life savings, because most of the money that the people had in savings was in real estate, and that has absolutely catastrophically collapsed. And so the people are looking and saying, we have no hope. We have no hope. And I think that lack of hope is going to eventually cause China to collapse. Let's go to the next slide, and we'll break it down a little bit
but
more.
Also, Larry, a lot of people, the Chinese, have bought real estate in America. I know that there's many people. I have a lot of friends who are real estate people, and they said that much of the properties have been bought by Chinese in America.
They have bought. I don't think that's there's not enough of them that's going to save their economy. But you did bring up something interesting. They've also bought large plots of lands, some of it near military bases, all of it agricultural stuff. So if we get down into China, we're going to find out that, guess what China did? They had, I mean, not China, Africa. There were large swaths of land that were bought in Africa by Chinese and mines and stuff. So a lot of these nations are just nationalizing them. I think when the time comes, we're going to have control of our own agriculture, and we're going to nationalize a lot of that farmland that China has taken. That's a little bit off of the topic for right now, though. So let's try to bring up that next slide, and I want to show you graphically the collapse of the Belt and Road Initiative. No, go up, go back. Yep, right there. So basically, that Belt and Road Initiative is basically a 4,000-mile water and land route that was going to let them tap into all the major natural resources of the world. They were going to go down into the Middle East, over into Africa, and also went partly over into South America. So look at the bottom down there on the left, and you'll see all that brown. Those were all nations that a year ago were part of the Belt and Road Initiative. China was in there building ports, building bridges, and all kinds of infrastructure. Now look to the right. That's what's left. Almost everybody has abandoned the project because they know China is in default. They can't pay. They can't get those projects done. And so that's where China's left. They're left without their 100-year plan. It's literally falling apart as we speak. And that is going to be a major contributor to the collapse of China.
Wow.
Should we go on?
Yes, keep going.
All right. Now we're looking at Trump's trade deals, and I want to try to broaden the conversation. The news media, the fake news media, only uses one word, tariffs. And they are able to say then around that one crystallizing word, it's going to cost you more money to buy this and to buy that and to buy the next thing. And it's not going to work, and it's going to bring hardship on the people. It's way more than that, way more. Here's one of the things right here. So his trade deals from the first administration basically put some pretty significant tariffs on China, and our stock market didn't go down. It went up from 10,000 to 30,000, and we didn't see any appreciable price increases. Basically, the economy had the greatest rebound it had ever had. But one of the things that we have to fix now is they figured out how to get around it. So what they do is they make a product in China, they put a label on it, they ship it to Mexico, to Vietnam, to Taiwan, to wherever. They rip the tag off and put it made in Mexico, made in Taiwan. Well, we've got a problem with that because now they've just got around the tariffs, and basically Trump has gone to Mexico and said, oh, wait a minute, you're part of the American continent trade program, and you get absolutely preferential deals. You can't do that. You can't ship products into America that you say were made in Mexico, but they weren't. So what they were doing is bringing these products in and just assembling them here. So that's one of the loopholes that Trump has to close in this tariff deal. And then another thing, we've got Canada to the north. Well, what does Canada do? There's a whole plethora of agricultural goods that, forget tariffs, they won't even let us send them there under any consideration. They're blocking our farmers. They're blocking our timber industries. So that's another problem, another part of why Trump has to get this tariffs all figured out. And then the biggest one of all is dumping. And what that is when basically China says, well, let's look at the 4, 5, or 6 most crucial industries in the world. So let's take steel. That's absolutely crucial. So what do? They subsidize the steel industry to the point that they dump their products on the U.S. market and all over the world at prices that no foreign company can compete with. And so basically what's happened is the gutting of our steel industry, and it goes on and on and on. So that's where the narrative needs to be placed on all of those factors, not just on the lie that says you're going to pay more money. In the long run, this is going to lead to just what it did in the first term. It's going to lead to massive increase in the stock market when we're going to have a collapse first. And we'll get into that later. But the long-term ramifications are prosperity for every American watching this. And in the long run, over the next 10 years, peace and prosperity for the world, because it was Eisner who said, is there any man or woman or child who doesn't understand the principal cause of war is inequality from nation to nation? And that's what's going to be fixed here when we get fair, equitable trade deals with every nation of the world. And the one that got the worst deal of all is Africa. And so we're going to talk about Africa is no longer coming to the table with its hat in its hand and asking. Africa is now realizing that they are, at this point in time, the indispensable continent.
Well, and that's what President Trump has said. We're coming into a golden age. But first, as you are, or what we're seeing around the world is the exposure of these injustices. And that's what they've done. The deep state has gone in and tried to bring these wars, and they've tried to, destabilize these countries, and it wasn't just, of course, the election stolen in America. It was stolen in, according to what Juan has said, 72 other nations.
Right.
And so we're going to see God is going to bring alignment to the planet. But first, the exposure. So continue on, Larry.
All right, so let's go to the next slide. Next one. All right, so this is important to the overall economic stability of America. This is an intentional reset by the global financial elite. And every nation in the world, starting in 2020 with COVID, has been brought into the greatest amount of debt they've ever had. And then in Russia, add to that the war, so they're in financial near collapse. China's in free fall. America has a $37 trillion national debt, and a big portion of that is going to be refinanced this year. So that takes us to this slide. Trump has to create a soft collapse. Right now, the world is united around two things. They want to see to it that China can no longer control the world by controlling trade and therefore all the necessities of life. And they want to see that the United States cannot control other nations by leveraging its position as the sole reserve currency of the world. So here's what's happening. Trump negotiated a trade deal with India that got them to come out of BRICS. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And what they're doing is leveraging their own currency system. But what Trump needs to do is he knows that the power is shifting. America will not come out of this as the sole reserve currency, but his goal is to have us come out as the predominant reserve currency. And to do that, he wants to have 61% of all the trade conducted in the US dollar. So if you look at that chart over to the side, you'll see the dollar since 71, when we went off gold, has been going down, down, down. And depending on who you talk to, it's worth 3 or 4 cents. So why is a house that was in 2020, let's say $200,000, now $5 or $550? Well, it's not because it's really worth more. It's because the US dollar has gone down that much. And that's happening in every nation around the world. So we have to have a soft reset. So here's what's going to happen. If you go to the next slide, I'll break this down. Up in the top, let's lean forward and see if I can read some of this. Bottom line is there's going to be some pain. We're going to see some vacillations in the stock market. We're going to see an economic slowdown. We're going to see inflation for a while. But let's go back to the one that says economic slowdown. That's what Trump wants. So he wants to devalue the dollar. Now, people don't really understand what that means. Other nations do it all the time. When you devalue the dollar, it means that your goods are cheaper to the rest of the world. Therefore, it stimulates your economy. But what he's really heading to do is to cause an inflationary cycle that forces the Fed to say, we're going to lower interest rates. So basically, Bank of America, I'm sure they're on the inside, they've announced that they're expecting 4 reductions in interest rates this year. Now, that's critical to America coming out of this in the financial position that it wants to be, where it's still the predominant reserve currency of the world. So with this huge debt of $37 trillion, a large part of it to be renegotiated this year, Trump has to drive down the interest rates, or otherwise our national debt payments are going to go up so high that it could actually cause a default. So basically, there's a brilliance in what Trump is doing. Then we go down to taxes. Well, when he first came in, he put in the largest tax reduction that's ever been, bigger even than what Reagan did. But it came up it was expiring. They got it passed. I'm not sure what's in that bill, but I can tell you what he wants in it. He wants for those price tax reductions to be permanent. Now we'll get into a minute at what that means, but basically, if we can get permanent tax cuts, here's what he's saying to the rest of the world. You can forget about paying tariffs. Just come over here to America and build your products here. You won't have any tariffs at all, and you'll be a beneficiary of some of the lowest taxes in the world. So he's executing a brilliant strategy to bring back just exactly the right amount of business to the United States, to revitalize our manufacturing, to give jobs to our people, to lower the cost of everything, to allow us to do this refinancing of our national debt without declaring default. So that's all related to the tariff issue. It's all part and parcel of it. And the news is not letting us see the big picture. This is catastrophic for America and catastrophic for the world if we don't get it right. So let's go on down to the next slide, and I'll try to make this quick. I'm basically having to reach out and ask for support because I've got a second book coming out. And let's look at what Trump did when he first come back in. He got out of USAID. I'll tell you about that in another slide. And he immediately got out from under the Federal Department of Education. Well, my second book is due to come out on August 15th, if it's on time, but I had to go to a publisher and pay nearly $15,000. I've collected about 90% of that. So if there's anybody out there who hasn't contributed and would like to do so, if you just click on that QR code, you'll be able to go to my site and you'll be able to donate it. What this is all about is now that that void has been created by Trump getting rid of the Federal Department of Education, I think we can get truth-telling books into our education system. So this book, if it's going to go into our schools, have to be letter perfect. So I hired the best publisher I could find, and now I need to be able to get the last few dollars in there so that when the time comes, we can get the book on the market. Let's go on and get down to the events of the day. That's what people really want to talk about. So you asked a question in the beginning, Meri, what's it mean to people? So let's go to the next slide and I'll lay it out. Here's what Trump says we need, and there's a surprise behind this. So I'm going to read this real quickly. He wants to form loyal trading partnerships. That means that there are going to be people who are going to be in this deal and ironclad supporters of the United States and our policies. Sovereign borders. It means he's got to solve the problem with Canada and solve the problem with Mexico. We can talk about that more later. Reciprocal trade deals. That means fair, balanced trade deals so America is not bleeding out and going deeper and deeper into debt every time we turn around. Energy independence. So he's laid it all out in his first term. He passed the Chevron deal, which says that we have some almost 6,000 patents that we're now going to be able to get access to, and it'll have everything in it from incredibly cheap energy. And we're talking about the cost of things. Most people don't realize this, depending on what you're buying and how complicated the supply chain is. Energy is 40 to 60% of the cost of everything you'll ever buy. But with the Chevron deal, he says, we're going to have free energy because we're going into AI and we're going into quantum computing, and that's going to double or triple our energy demands. And not one grid in the entire world can support that kind of increase in energy. So we're going to have virtually free energy, and the cost of living for everything you buy and everything you go in the store to buy is going to go down. So contrary to what they're saying, your prices are going to go up and up and up. They will for a short period of time, but then we're going to have the best economy we've ever had in our life with the lowest prices we've ever had and the lowest taxes we're going to have. So if Trump gets that tax bill passed, I'm going to tell you what it means. Just in just a few months, 150 of the nations of the world have said, okay, we're going to turn our backs on China and we're going to negotiate with the United States of America. And then we're going to build America. So $5 trillion has been committed to build factories in America. And what did Trump say? What did he do? He said, anybody who comes in and gives us $1 billion, we'll get rid of all the regulations that block you. You can start building your factory immediately. You can have the cheapest taxes in the whole world. And basically you will prosper coming here. You won't have to pay any tariffs, and you'll have very low taxes. So now, if we make that tax bill permanent, I want to show you what happened in the landscape and how it affects each and every family out there. So now if that happens, instead of getting $5 trillion, if the people know that this is a 20 or 30 or 40-year opportunity, they're going to do just what they did in 71 when they went to China, because we got off the gold standard. And we might have, I don't know, 10 trillion, 20 trillion, 30 trillion, 40 trillion invested in factories. And it's going to be just what Trump said. built in America, made in America, by America, and it's going to prosper us and prosper the whole world, because what we did when we first became the wealthiest nation in the world is we developed the Industrial Revolution, and we developed our own infrastructure, and we shared it with the world. And that's exactly what Trump wants to do, because the bottom line to his overall strategy is to bring every nation in the world at relative economic parity, ushering in a period of peace and prosperity. So reduce waste and fraud. Can you say Doge? That's what that is. Reduce the size of government. Can you say Doge? So basically, if you waste your money as an individual, eventually you go bankrupt. If we waste our money, eventually we go bankrupt. And power back to the local and state government, out of the hands of the Fed, where all the corruption is now. Here's the twist. That's what Trump says we have to be a solid nation, financially solvent, and to be a leader of the world. That's exactly what every other nation in the world needs too. So he's just laid out for the world the plan for America to be great, and the plan for each and every nation in the world to be great. There it is. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. There's the
Mary,
long run strategy for the world.
I just want to interject because I'm trying to bring this home to the people too watching. I was at an event last weekend and ran into a gentleman, and he was not a Trump supporter. In fact, he hated Trump, and it was interesting just to listen to him. I don't try to argue with people like that, but he said, "Yeah, this is going to be the worst Christmas ever. All those products that were made in China, we're not going to be able to get them." And he was just basically very negative, thinking because of the tariffs and what President Trump is doing with China. What about the guys that are listening to this saying that this is going to really hurt our economy with what President Trump is doing, in particular with China? Because a lot of the Walmart, a lot of things in Walmart and some of these big box stores are made in China, aren't they?
There's going to be short-term pain. There's going to be a readjustment, but I'm going to ask you a question. Do you want to live in a world where this generation, for example, doesn't have the opportunities my generation had? You've got millions of people in China and here and all over the world, and they're younger people, say 30 or below, who have lost the dream of ever owning a home, who basically have to have a husband and wife working and still can't pay the bills. So yes, we're going to have some short-term pain where a few things are going to go up, but I ask you this, go back to his first term. Was it anywhere near as devastating as they said it was going to be? No, the economy boomed, it rebounded. We're going to have a collapse. We have to have, because this is the global financial reset. In order to get control of the economy, we have to get out from under the fiat dollar, and the whole world is going to go to an economy based on God's economic system, based on commodities that cannot be controlled or manipulated. Financial collapses and booms and busts cannot be caused, and economic stability will prosper around the world. And like I said, with the free energy that we're going to get, thanks to Trump passing the Chevron deal, the cost of everything you're going to buy, think a year out now, don't think, at Christmas time, think a year and a half out, they're going to be 40, 50, 60% less, because basically the energy costs are going to go down. And now add on to that, that we're probably going to pay off a lot of our national debt, and then add on to that the fact that basically, I just lost my point. The dollar will be worth something. So let's take a house. In 2020, let's make up some numbers. $200,000 house is probably selling now for $450, $550, not because it's worth more, but because the dollar's been going down. So when the dollar is pegged to gold, then all of a sudden the dollar is going to be worth a dollar, and your buying power is going to be greater. So look at those huge strides that you made compared to the fear mongering that you're going to pay more for your Christmas presents. Come on, folks. You want to live in slavery for the rest of your life, or do you want to have a living where your children have a dream, and where they can buy houses, and where they can have one person in the family working? That's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for freedom and equality for every human being on the face of this planet, not just Americans.
Yes, and I live in California, so many people are having to leave California because they can't afford a home here. A lot of people are having to live with their parents. Oftentimes there'll be 3, 4 people that have to rent an apartment or a house because they can't afford it. They're not getting married, or they're both having to work. So God is going to turn this around. But as you said, Larry, there could be some short-term pain. So let's continue on with the next slide. Go ahead.
Before we go to that slide, I want to comment on something that came up as you were talking. So if you think this isn't working, ask yourself this. How is it that there are states around that are now saying that there's not going to be any personal property tax? If we're in such bad trouble, how are we able to do that? And so basically, there's states that are saying there's not going to be any more capital gains taxes. And Trump specifically came out and said, my goal in order to have the strong economy that I want is that we were going to be the crypto capital of the world. And Sun Tzu says, take advantage of the mistakes your enemy made. So going back a few years, thinking of crypto, it was right there for China to control it. 60% of the Bitcoin mining was done in China. They kicked them out because they were afraid of the power. So now it's in America. And what's Trump saying? If you buy American-made cryptos, you will not pay capital gains. So you tell me, you might make $1 million in crypto and you wouldn't be happy if you didn't have to pay any capital gains on it? Come on, folks, open up. It's right there. It's right there for you to see. We're breaking the chains of slavery, and we're going to have an opportunity to maybe have one person in the family work, and you can get to know your wife and get to know your kids, and you can even buy a house on one income. That's what's coming, folks. So let's go to the next slide, like you said, and we'll break it down. I don't think people have any understanding of what's about to happen. What you're seeing there is Asia. And it's, if you look down to the bottom, it's 60% of the world's population. But guess what? We have control over that market to a significant degree. Why? Because the neighbors of China all consider China to be a pariah. So they're all aligned with the U.S. militarily for protection. Think 10 years out. So you're going to see we're going to have to change a lot. 10 years out, if we've been successful, the threat of China the CCP will have collapsed. The Chinese people have one of the biggest underground Christian churches in the world. They're going to be a non-threatening nation, and that's going to cause the trade balance in Asia to shift. Why? Because a lot of those nations will choose to do more business locally, where they might ship 500 miles to ship to Vietnam, but as opposed to 4,000 or 5,000 miles that come to the United States. So don't get upset, though. We've got so many fingers out there that we're fine, but we still do have to refine what the global market is going to look like for America in the future. Let's go to the next slide, and we'll see if there's even more to it than that. So basically, people call Australia part of the Asian sphere of influence. And then if you think about it, right on the other side is Europe. Now, if you put all that together and you just use a little common sense, that's 75% of the world's population all amassed in one small area on the other side of the globe, meaning they're all got regional proximity, which we don't have. So we have to do some smart things in the future to be able to counterbalance that and keep the equilibrium between East and West that we're going to have if we're going to have the future that we all want. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll start to break down and think of all the bombastic things that Trump says and does. He's not stupid. He's one of the most brilliant men I've ever known. Or I don't know him that I'm ever known of, I should say. And he follows Sun Tzu, which is the most brilliant militarist mind in the world. So he says these things. Oh, Canada, you're going to be the 51st state. And Mexico, we're going to come in and we're going to take the cartels out. And then we're going to give all these high tariffs. No, it's all just to get the microphone. He has to do that kind of thing to get the microphone away from the lying press. So here's what's got to happen. He closed the border pretty much with Mexico. So now the fentanyl is coming in from Canada. And remember, Canada is a crown corporation. There's some things we got to fix in Canada if we're going to have the kind of relationship we want. So we've got to negotiate some things with Canada for our border security. We've got to get to them to say, you know what, we're no longer going to block all your agricultural materials and so forth and so on. And then we got to go down to Central America, and we've got to make sure we got control over the Panama Canal so we can get over to the other side of the world. And we got to go to Greenland and get control of that. So if anything happens to the Panama Canal, we can still get over to the other side of the world. And we got to go down to South America, because no nation can prosper if it doesn't have relative stability. And if it has wars going on in Korea and guerrilla activities, it's never going to prosper because companies won't go there. So what did Trump do? Everything, you can't look at it on the surface. He put drones over Mexico. Did they come in and buzz them with planes? No, they let them fly. And then he said, we're going to come in and we're going to declare the cartels as terrorist groups, and we're going to take them out. And the president of Mexico says, you can't come into Mexico and do that. So guess what? He did it anyway. Was there any retaliation? No, there wasn't. Why? Because first of all, she can't say to the public that I'm inviting America in. She'd have unbelievable backlash, and she can't acknowledge it because the cartel probably try to kill her. So I try to do these shows so we can see past the lies and the things that are told to us by the media. And then let's get into South America. He said that those cartels are in 34 different countries. So he's going to have to do the same thing with South America. Now, if we rid them of all the cartel activity, they can prosper and we can help them grow, and we can add that to our sphere of influence going forward as far as trying to balance that trade out. And then that takes us to the indispensable continent, Africa. So if we go to the next slide, and I'll try to tell you what's happening. Africa, of course, has been one of the colonies of Europe, the colonial era. They got the freedom after World War II, but they didn't get the freedom because basically the Europeans got together in a boardroom and they said, let's break them up into 45 different, 54 different nations. And let's make sure that they don't get the infrastructure that they need or the money they need in order to develop their mining industries, and that they're kept in abject poverty. And that's in the state that Africa's in. But Africa is rising. Africa is no longer dependent. Africa is saying to the world, something changed. And let's go to the next slide, and I'll tell you what their model is going into the future. None of this is happening for the first time. It's just repeat of history where we've had the presence of mind to look back and say what happened in the past. So OPEC, those nations used to be dirt poor, but they realized in 73 that they had something the world needed. At that point, they were the indispensable block of nations. And so they had the 73 oil embargo, brought the industrialized world to its knees. And all of a sudden, we went in and negotiated with them fairly. They put their oil money into our banks. We gave them security. We gave them infrastructure. We gave them education. And we basically allowed them to be, I don't know the statistics, but I think probably the wealthiest nation in the world. We did that by giving a deal to them that allowed them to access what they had because we needed it as much or more than they did. That's what.
Well, and Larry, this was back in 73,
Yes.
right? And looking back in history, some people watching, and I don't really remember this, but from what I've studied, is there was gas lines at the gas station. Was that around that time when they did that?
I was getting out of college right then. You got your gas based on whether your license plate was an even or odd number. So every other day you could go to get gas. So if you're running low on gas, and maybe you tried to get gas the day before, but the wait was 4 hours and you couldn't get it, I mean, you're out of luck. So that's what happened.
You look at President Trump just got back from there a few weeks ago, and they treated him like a king. And what they're doing now, with the trillions of dollars they're investing into America, it's a win-win. But yeah, going back in history with that, as you said, the oil embargo, I've talked to people that talked about those gas lines, and the prices were exorbitant, right, on the gas pump.
You control energy and you control all the necessities of life because you control if you can buy food and whatever else, pay your health bills, whatever. So they gave him a $400 million airplane and a $1 trillion investment, and nations all over the world are lining up and they're waiting for the real money to come in when they find out if these tax cuts are permanent. When that happens, open the floodgates, the money is going to come in. Hallelujah. There's going to be full employment with high paying wages. Just wait. The future is going to be so bright you can't even imagine. Now, shifting from OPEC, that's the model for Africa, because all of a sudden, if we're going to have all these various minerals, 51 different minerals that are needed in order to have the technological society we want. You cannot make your phone, your computer, your airplanes, any of it without the rare earth minerals that Africa probably has more than any other nation in the world. So look over to the bottom over here, and you'll see Ibrahim Touré. And I really recommend you go out and look this man up, look up his nation, Burkina Faso. He's becoming, in my opinion, the Donald Trump of Africa, and he's becoming the Dr. How can I forget his name? That's embarrassing. Martin Luther King. So basically, he's saying to the world, I'm saying no to the rest of the world. Deals are going to be made on our terms, on Africa's terms. And here's what's happened. A number of the nations around Africa got together at his direction, pooled their money and basically the gold, I should say, and now they have their own sovereign currencies. They're not having to come to us and borrow and say, can we have some money? They're saying, we don't need you. If we're going to do a deal with you, it's going to be a fair and equitable deal. And we get to the end, I'm going to lay that out. But remember, go back to what Trump said he needed. It's exactly what every nation in the world needs. And now Burkina Faso is laying it out in specific deals. He's kicked out all kinds of binding concerns, kicked out European concerns, Chinese concerns, American concerns, and said, when you agree to pay me what's fair, you can come back in. And that's where we're going to close this and show you that they now are in the driver's seat. It's just like when Trump goes to Mexico and Canada, he looks at the card and says, I got a royal flush. This is no brainer. We're going to win. There's 150 nations that bend it. He knew he had it. But the world now needs what Africa has, and the world will bend a knee to Africa before this is over. And when that happens, there's going to be peace and prosperity all around the world. Let's go to the next slide. And here we go. And then I'm going to freelance and tell you a little bit more about Africa. This is the equation for peace and prosperity on the earth. And this is what Africa is saying. When you come back and you're willing to do this deal, we'll do business. Until then, we now have our own sovereign currencies. We're now smelting our own gold. We're now smelting our own iron. And we're doing some amazing things that I'll tell you about in a minute. So come back when you're ready to take our deal. Here is equity. What does that mean? It means they retain 51% ownership of all the mines and all the assets that they do a deal on. That's true partnership. And it says that they are no longer going to ship their raw materials to European nations and to Africa and to China to make a fortune. So here's an example. If you ship raw iron over to another country, you make on average about $7 a ton. Now, if you process that iron yourself, you make about $700. So that's how we've kept them in slavery. So they said, we're going to process our own gold, our own iron, our own lithium, our own whatever, and we're going to be a first world nation with first world rights, and the world is going to respect us. And you're also going to help us. You owe us because you kept us in slavery. So you're going to sweeten that deal a little bit by giving us employment. So it's not going to be the Chinese debt trap anymore, where they come in and build a road or build a dam or whatever using Chinese labor, and the locals aren't involved at all. It's going to be an external come in. It'll help them build it. It'll give them technical, and there'll be basically an apprenticeship program attached to it. So after they finish, they can do it themselves. So it's basically integrity. It's an ongoing process where they get better and better and better, and assist us develop infrastructure. So let's take Burkina Faso. They're a landlocked nation. So what are they doing? They just opened up their own airport capable of having a million passengers a year and a new terminal. And they're building a railroad from where they are to the coast so they can get access to trade around the world. And they just stunned the world. This stunned me, and I keep on top of this stuff pretty good. So they said, hey, guys, you want to make your EVs? Guess what? You need our lithium and you need our copper. We got something you need really bad. And guess what? We're no longer going to be just a consumer. And they just rolled out not a prototype, but a line of EV cars using their lithium and their copper. And now they're going to compete with Toyota, with Japan, with Germany, and with America on one of the most profitable market segments in the world, the EV automobile industry. And they even got a guy in Africa who says, we've now got a new technology, even better than that. It runs off of the ether from the planet, and it doesn't require any energy input at all, and it only costs $15,000. Africa is innovating. Africa is doing exactly what America did when we developed ourselves. So let me give you some ideas. You got to get water sufficiency. You've got to get food sufficiency. So what did we do in America? We said, we've got all this land out there, and it's not doing us any good. So we're going to give land away. So what are they doing? They're giving land away. It's like a homestead. And then they've opened up a college, an agricultural college, and they've been training their people. Region Africa starves to death. They don't have any water, and they're out there doing subsistence farming. Now, They've got drones flying over fields now. They got tractors. They got combines. They've got the latest agricultural technology in the world. And they have one of the potential to be one of the biggest breadbaskets in the entire world. So they're getting control of their water. They're getting control of their transportation. They're getting to the seaports. They got airplanes. They're going to compete in the automobile industry. They're going to compete in almost every major industry in the world. They're going to be a first world country, period. And 20 years from now, you know who's going to be our biggest competitor? Africa. And right now they're saying we're unwielding. If you come to the table, you will do the deal that we have on the table. So what else? I think I stopped before we finished. Environmental
Well,
oversight. So
and just,
basically,
just to interject in regards to Africa, even what we saw with President Trump and the South Africans coming in, South Africa, because there is a genocide going on, in particular with the white farmers. And according to my interview with Good Dog of Qubits earlier today, he said that President Trump literally said the 4 million, white farmers, that he actually invited them to come to America. And, that's what he said. And what Good Dog was saying, if they all came to America, what that would do was put South Africa in a place that would go back to before what happened with, with apartheid. It would literally, they'd go, really backward in time. And so right now that President Trump is trying to expose things, even in the Congo too. I have a good friend, Bree Keaton, that went over there, and there's a huge genocide that's going on over there in the Congo. They have the lithium. So China is coming in and causing a lot of problems among the Muslim rebels. And so what they're trying to do is bring these wars out in certain places. And President Trump is also sending a delegation into the Congo, into South Africa. And he's trying to, these war zones, he's trying to cause peace to come in there. And he's trying to literally bring unity. So continue on, Larry.
So basically, when you're talking South Africa, that's a trump card. He's
Right.
doing one of those bombastic things, and he's saying to the world, "Oh, look, let's stop bringing in people who can't feed themselves and take care of themselves, who are really refugees whose lives are in trouble, and who can pay for themselves and can support themselves." But now let's go to the Congo. There's more to that story, which you said is true, but some late breaking things that have happened. So there are 13 African nations that had deals proposed to them by Trump, and here's what I think it was. They were absurd. I looked at them and I said, "Hey, I'm no Donald Trump. I'm no economist, but I wouldn't accept one of those deals because they have unbelievable strings attached to them." So 13 nations said, "No, thank you. Come back when you're ready to take our deal." And guess what? China was there first. Europe was there first. They've all been kicked out. And now guess what? One by one, they're coming back. Soon America is going to come back and take the deal that Africa has. And what Trump is doing with making these ridiculous offers is not what people think. He's exposing the truth, just like you said in South Africa. He's exposing the absurdity of the demands that we try to make on Africa and saying, once it's out, the truth will set you free. We're going to be forced to take this deal. So let's go on and finish those last two. So one of the big issues is environmental oversight. So they go in and, the oil companies, and they leave, and the countries are just poisoned. The water table is poisoned. The gold mines poison the land. So they're going to say, not only are you going to give us a good deal economically, but you're going to clean up after yourself, and you're going to give us security concerns. Going to the Congo, here's an example of what you're talking about. There's a tiny little nation on the border of Congo. It's about 1/10 the size of Congo. It's called Rwanda. And all of a sudden, they have this massive army, way bigger than the Congos, and they have almost no natural resources. But guess what we found out? There was a nation, I will not name it, but they basically said to the rebels, "We want to buy your minerals." Well, they didn't have any minerals, but Congo did. And so all of a sudden they had a giant army, and they went in, and in no time flat, they took over the second largest city in Congo, 2 million people, and they were marching on the capital. And the president of Congo called up and said, I turned that deal down before, but now I want to do a deal with you for security. And so now basically we have a mineral deal in Congo, and that was orchestrated because what was that? That was another coup attempt, because they wanted the minerals. That's what we've done for hundreds of years in Africa. It's gonna stop. It's gonna stop. And look at that last slide. It's what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And if you look at the top slide, that was basically that document being signed, and no time flat. The three people there signed that deal, and the rebel incursion stopped. So as we close, how much time do we have, Meri? I want to finish on time for you.
5 minutes.
Okay, so let me just recap some of the things that are happening in Africa. They are going to be our greatest competitor in the long run, but it's going to be a good thing because it's going to leave the world in a position. So one of the things that was disclosed in 2023, this is Trump setting things up, was Matt Gaetz was in Congress, and he brought in the general who's over Africa, um, Michael Langley, and he forced him. He kept asking all these questions. I don't know. I can't say. I couldn't tell you. And basically, it came out that, yep, guess what? We trained a whole bunch of military and sent them into Africa, and we know that at least 2 of those people ended up leading coups in Africa. Trump's disclosing he's getting the table set up so we can find out what's going on. And I'm going to go on down, and this is just Burkina Faso, but it's happening all over Africa. And this is not everything they've done, but they have said we're going to mine our own gold. They're doing it. They said they're going to build massive amounts of housing for their people, and they're doing it. They said they're tired of the resources being sent abroad, so they opened up a textile plant where they're making their own cotton and spinning the looms and making finished garments. They've opened up a new airport. They're building roads. They're what's this one down here? Hold on, I'm going to pull up a slide. I'm doing this off of memory, and if I have a picture, maybe it'll help me a little bit. Okay, so they're also doing their own looms, and this one's huge. Basically, they're going to be one of the largest grain belts in the world, going from starvation. So he was building a dam, he's building schools, he's building hospitals, he's taking over, doing something that we have the ability to do and haven't done for years. He's taking all his agricultural waste and he's turning it into oil. And there's a guy who invented that technology over here called Brian Appel, and he has factories out there that are doing it for commercial purposes. But the United States of America has never taken him up on it. They're taking up. So basically, they're doing everything just by the books. We have to have transportation. We have to have manufacturing. We have to have control over all of our natural resources. Make no mistake, Africa's deal will be accepted by every major nation in the world. There'll be peace and prosperity because all nations of the world are going to have fair, equitable deals. And Donald Trump is the one who's orchestrating all of that. And go check out Burkina Faso. They are the nation in Africa that everybody is rallying around. And what Africa is saying is this: it's our deal or it's no deal. And they're even talking about Abraham Torre saying, one day, maybe one day real soon, there'll be a United States of Africa, and maybe this man will be our president. So this is your Martin Luther King of the day. This is your Donald Trump of the day. Donald Trump is God's man, and I think Torre is God's man. And I think God is bringing peace and prosperity and equity to the world. And I think the standard of living for the entire world is going to go up. There's no shortages. There's only corrupt people who hoard the cornucopia of assets that God has given to the people of this world. Get ready for greater things than you could ever imagine. And don't swallow the lies about the tariffs are going to cost you more money. The tariffs are going to set you free, folks. So with that, Meri, I'm done if you're done.
Yeah, Larry, now you have a book. Let's put up that last slide that has your book, Liberty Crusade. I know your story so well. Why don't you just set up the book if people want to get it? Explain a little bit about your book.
All right. Well, you can press on that QR code, but I do have something interesting to tell you, something that's almost embarrassing. So when I went to get this book out, nobody published it, but a lady who worked for Harrison House said, it's a great book. I'll publish it for you. So she did. So now we're ready to have the second book, the one we want to get into the schools. She called me the other day and set up a Zoom call, and she said, I got to talk to you about something. She said, I read your book. It's fantastic. She said, I went on Amazon. You got nothing but 5-star reviews. But you haven't sold anywhere near the number of books you should be selling for a book of this quality. She says, you know what they did to you? Well, I don't want to say they did to me. Somewhere, somehow this happened. This is a non-fiction book. This is basically the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in one spot. They put me in fiction. So you go out and you want to find out the new Green Deal, you want to find out about what's happened in the Congo or anywhere else, I'm not going to come up. because I'm a fiction book. And then she showed me some graphs and showed all the fiction categories are going down. People's eyes are looking for the truth now, and all those categories are going up. You're blind. So I have a favor to ask of your audience. If you bought my book, I'm going to ask you to do the following. If you haven't bought my book but have seen my shows and like what I do, help me. I'm going to try to get a presence on social media, and we're already going to Amazon and getting this book put in the right category so we can have some visibility. But you could help me immediately. Not you want to buy the book, it's a great book. I ask you to do so. But what I really need you to do is get on Facebook and post something and tell the people about this great book. Tell them about the truth and how the truth will set you free, and how this book was inspired by God in 1968. And it's been my life's mission to get the truth out to the people so it'll set them free. Help me get the cloak of invisibility off of me. I don't say it was done intentionally, but maybe, who knows? So thank you, Meri, for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
Yes, well, thank you, Larry, for coming on the show today, and thank you for watching Now Is the Time. I have an event coming up on June 6th and 7th in Costa Mesa called Open the Heavens, California Dreamin'. I would love to have you guys come out. We're going to stream it live. The 7th one will be in San Francisco area. We're getting the venue finalized in the next week or so. Let me tell you, the greatest show on earth is rolling out. And God is literally setting the stage for the greatest show on earth. And so if you could go to mericrouley.com, you can register for free. It's only a smaller venue. We've got Ginny Donnelly, who actually is part of the Her Voice movement. They did a large event. I was there in the Washington Mall, October 12th. There was over 400,000 people there. And we had Jonathan Kahn, Lou Engle, a number of people, Ginny Donnelly, myself. We were all coming together and we really repented. Something broke. This was before the election. And I believe that coming together as we repented before the Lord, as it says in 2 Chronicles 7:14, if my people called by my name will humble themselves, pray, seek his face, but lastly turn from our wicked ways. Then God said, I will hear from heaven and heal your land. So we're going to see a great awakening. So you can go to mericrouley.com. You can register, or if you want to be a VIP, we have special seating in the front and after the morning session. We will literally have, we'll be praying over people in the upper room upstairs. This is a church in 100 years ago that Amy Simple McPherson, who is an incredible woman of God in Los Angeles, that built Angela's Temple, and all of Hollywood would come out and watch her illustrated sermons. So, Larry, thank you for coming back on. Put Larry back in the screen. Thank you, Larry, for coming on. Thank you for watching. And please know that even as you were talking about Africa, Larry, I was just at a meeting this last weekend with a man, Dennis. It's hard to say his name. He's from Uganda. But let me tell you, his mother, I don't know what year it was. I think it was in the 60s, brought him to hear a man named Benson Idahosa, who was a mighty man of God. And he became a Christian, and he started literally bringing his classmates to Christ. And they started seeing sovereign miracles. They would pray over these desolate, barren fields, and God would bring greenery. I mean, they started seeing supernatural miracles. He came over to America, and now this man has written many books, and he's saying that Africa is going to be a country, like you said, that God is going to use. There's so many Christians. Nigeria has some of the biggest churches. Uganda. People in Africa are rising up and praying. So right now, you guys, we're going to see a great awakening around the globe. And we are seeing God in taking back these places, opening these portals, and bringing forth a great awakening. And what President Trump is doing, he's just one man, but we need to continue to support him in prayer. You know that they want to take him out. We need to continue to bathe him in prayer and his family, that God will continue to raise up the people around the world that will help hold up his arms, and that we will come together to see the greatest move of God in history. So please, thank you for coming on, Larry. Thanks for watching. Please follow or subscribe, and it changes the algorithms when you like it and make comments. They've tried to shadow ban me on a lot of stuff because I talk about trafficking. And so if you can be the one that you share it with 5 people, help Larry on Facebook with his book, And it's not fiction. I know they put that in there, but for sure on purpose. It's not.
I want to add one thing based on what you said. I can't remember the diplomat's name, but there was a retired diplomat that basically was sent to Burkina Faso, and he made a public statement. And he says, "I'm here to apologize." He said, "We have taken advantage of Africa for decades. I'm here to apologize." So I don't care what you see in the news about the bombastic deals that Trump's doing. He sent a man there to apologize to Africa. The future is going to be fair and equitable and prosperous. So thank you, Meri.
Yeah, so thanks for watching. Now is the time. God bless you guys. Continue to follow, like, subscribe, and share this with as many people as you can. The best is yet to come as we come into Pentecost, which will be June 1st and 2nd, 50 days after the Passover. We are going to see, I believe, an explosion of God's power globally around the world for the greatest awakening the culture has ever seen. Both not only knowing Jesus, but actually an economic shift that the wealth of the wicked will be released for the just, so we can make the movies, the music, the businesses, the things that he's called me to do, called you to do, and called all of us to do to bring in this end time harvest. God bless you, Larry. God bless you for watching. We'll see you
You
soon.
too, Meri.